Okay, morning girls. The question we're moving on today is the 60 mark higher level cash flow statement question. So just a quick look at how the question is presented first of all, and then we'll go through in this video just the first part of it. So again, you get an abridged profit and loss account for the year, similar to the ordinary level, and you get these two balance sheets for the previous year and the current year, if you like, and then I suppose one extra piece of information that isn't in the ordinary level is you get these normally three pieces of information at the end or underneath the balance sheet, which we'll be dealing with very shortly. Then, I suppose one other big difference in the way that they ask the question as well. Part A and Part B in this question. Part B is all theory that we'll be looking at in class, and Part A is similar to the three parts that they have in the ordinary level question, except instead of breaking it into three parts, all they say is prepare the cash flow statement for the year ended, including reconciliation statements. So you still have to prepare the cash flow statements and the two reconciliation statements. So one reconciliation statement, then the cash flow, then the second reconciliation statement, just like in the ordinary level questions. Okay, so I suppose the big difference here, or what makes it a little bit more difficult here, is they don't actually name the reconciliation statement, so you can't just use the question to rephrase it, to put down the heading for the first reconciliation, for instance, which is the reconciliation of operating profit to net cash inflow from operating activities. So you have to learn those headings off, or certainly understand what they mean so that you'll be able to repeat them. I have written the title over here just to say that you'll have to learn that off. But that said, I don't think I've ever seen a time when they've given any marks for it, but that doesn't mean that won't change in the future. So it's important that you do know it and know it accurately. Okay, that's one thing. So the next thing then also is, or I suppose the next most important thing is, you'll notice they don't give you a helping hand by asking or by presenting you with the headings that you must use in the cash flow statement. Now you must still use those headings and you get marks for those headings, but you have to learn them off by heart, so it makes it a little bit more difficult here for this higher level question. Okay, so first things first then, we'll start with the first reconciliation statement, which, as I said, is, if we look over here, reconciliation of operating profit to net cash inflow from operating activities, and it looks very similar to the ordinary level question, and because there are some parts of it that are identical to the ordinary level question, I've started it off and filled them in already. So for instance, we always start with the operating profit, the very same way. We get the operating profit from the bridged profit and loss account. There it is, 157,000. We have either an increase or decrease in stock, increase or decrease in debtors, an increase or decrease in creditors, whatever it happens to be, and you have the same rules apply. Subtract a decrease in creditors, add an increase in creditors, etc., etc. So just these minus this, well, we'll say 7,000, 13,000 and 30,000, they are all gotten in the same way from the balance sheets. If we just look at the stock one, and we'll just take it that the debtors and creditors are the same way, the stock went from 144,000 in 2015 to 151,000 in 2016, so that was an increase of 7,000. Okay, so increase of 7,000. There we see it. Okay, and so we'll continue on now. In the ordinary level question, we had operating profit, stock, debtors, creditors, depreciation. I think that was it. And then we had our net cash inflow from operating activities. At the higher level, there's a few extra or a few additional things that you put in here. One of them that comes up every single time is either the profit or loss on the sale of a fixed asset, and we can see, or at least we should be able to see, that profit or loss on the sale of a fixed asset is, well, for instance, if we take the loss side of it, is a non-cash expense. So for instance, if you sell an old car that you had in the business and you sell it for, we'll say, 2,000 euros, in real cash terms, you're selling it for €2,000. It means you're up €2,000. You've got €2,000 more than you had before you sold it. You're down a car, obviously the old vehicle is gone, but you're up €2,000 in cash. However, depending on how much you paid for the car when you first bought it years ago and how much depreciation you charged in it will determine whether you made a profit or a loss on it. So in the trading profit and loss or profit and loss account, you may have determined that you made a loss on the fixed asset, and that goes in, a loss on sale of a fixed asset goes in as an expense, which reduces your operating profit. However, that's not a cash expense, because in reality, what's happened is no money has left your bank account or your pocket. Money has you've gained money from doing this transaction, so that's a non-cash expense, and we must include it here. There are a few other things as well that you may see coming up at higher level questions. Things like if there is an increase or decrease in the provision for bad debts, that often comes up in the higher level. And one that we often see in pre's but not in the Leaving Cert itself is if there's an increase or a decrease in expenses due or prepaid. Now, if you want a complete list of what could come up here, if you look at your textbook on page 410 in the cash flow statement section, it goes through all of the different things that could come up here and how you deal with them. So for instance, like the loss on the sale of a fixed asset, you add on, whereas if it was the profit on the sale of a fixed asset, you subtract. It's kind of counterintuitive in that way. Depreciation, as always, we add on just like we did at the ordinary level. So the same rules apply whether it's higher or ordinary level anyway. Okay, so moving on to calculate these last few items and to get the net cash inflow from operating activities. The depreciation, first of all. Let me see if I can get an old piece of paper here. I'll take this out, actually. Bear with me.